Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day everyone.
It is the 3rd of October. This is episode 129. We've got a big show coming up. We're going to be talking to Daisy Cousens, Sky News commentator, YouTube star. We're going to be talking to her about this whole Trump-Russia thing and, the Trump-Ukraine thing and how Australia's found its way into it and a bunch of other stories with her as well. We're also going to be talking to Angus Heaton, one of the IPA's campus coordinators. He's got this event on energy coming up, and there's a few other things like life in South Australia, I think is one of the topics.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things we're going to cover.
I don't know. You booked it, mate. And what else we got? We got the RMIT Confucius Center, the new story with that. We have Trump and Russia, facial recognition database, a whole bunch of stuff we're going to be doing. Heroes and villains. Anything you're looking forward to, Pete?
Mate, I'm really looking forward to my hero this week because it's one of my favourites ever. But
Okay.
before we get into that, I've got something I want to discuss with you, James.
Right. Okay.
Now, Saul, if you could just play a little bit of footage from the weekend. Thanks, mate.
A second to go. The Tigers are premiers for the 12th time in their history.
Yeah, so for people who are only listening, Pete was just playing a few highlights of the Richmond Tigers celebrating their premiership win.
That's right.
Go Tigers. There we're playing again.
There it is.
All right, sweet. Huge day for me.
Yeah, what'd you get up
to? Awesome. Just went to the game with our mate Rob, and after that went to a house party, and I'll just say, Sober October couldn't have come quick enough.
Oh, that's right. So you've called Sober October your celebrations with that pig. That's what you're getting into.
Yeah,
now.
we need to change a few things, but I will be wearing the scarf for the rest of the show. All right, so let's have a modicum of seriousness here.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, because as much as I could talk about Richmond's victory all show, and I just might, we don't know. I might just grow a bit weary of this whole world of politics and talk about Basher Hooley. Anyway, so the Trump impeachment stuff is our first story here.
Yeah.
And this is something that I don't, I read 5 different articles and I still don't quite get what happened. And I'm going to say this as well. I don't think anyone knows what happened.
Well, not yet.
Yeah, so it's this classic thing of the Australian media, the second that Australia as a country gets brought up into the world of Trump and the world of the Ukraine stuff, the Australian media loses its mind. It doesn't have any idea what, it's like a dog chasing a car. It's like it's finally got it, it has no idea what to do with it. They only thought about the excitement beforehand.
We're finally on the world stage.
Exactly. So what we do know is that I think the big thing is that Joe Hockey wrote to the US Attorney General Barr and said that Australia is going to cooperate with the investigation. And that apparently is a terrible thing that needs to be discussed in the media for an entire week. But when you think about it for longer than 5 seconds, you're like, hang on, that doesn't seem like that big a story.
No, it doesn't. And I like that it all started with Alexander Downer having a beer in London. Yeah. And had a bit of a chat with someone from the Trump administration, and then, that's all kicked off from there.
Yeah, so, what Pete's talking about there is, Downer's meeting with Papadopoulos, who was a Trump aide, and there was, the idea that Papadopoulos thought that the Russians were about to drop something on Clinton. Downer reports that to the Australians report that to Americans, and, that seems to be ground zero for the Trump, Ukraine, Russia thing. And then the fact that Australia wants to help out with the investigation then brings Australia into it. And suddenly it's does Scott Morrison have too close a relationship with President Donald Trump?
That's right, yeah. And we'll be talking in more detail, of course, about this with Daisy Cousens later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this classic thing of every Trump impeachment story or any story about Trump is just a Rorschach test.
Sorry?
A Rorschach test.
I don't know what that is.
You know those ink blot tests? So they put an ink blot in front of you and you got to say what you see.
No, but anyway. That's all right. The punters
right, so you were a well-structured child. Okay, interesting. All right, so anyway, it's like an ink blot. You just say what you see, I see a cloud or I see 2 ladybirds and stuff like that. But anyway, every Trump story is just here are the facts, and you are just going to see what you want to see. If you want to see impeachment, you're going to see impeachment. If you want to see Trump's the best, you're going to see Trump's the best. If you're like me, you just see a big ink blot. That's all you see.
Yeah, look, I don't think he's going to get impeached. That's the main thing. There's been no US president's ever been impeached in history. Nixon resigned before he was about to get impeached, obviously. Clinton lied to a grand jury, which I believe is better than a normal jury, and didn't end up...
It's like a grand final's better than a normal final.
That's right. Didn't end up getting impeached.
Yeah.
So, this conversation, it's a bit grubby, trying to get Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden's son.
Yeah, right.
It's not something that the general public is that kind of... they don't like it, but he's not going to get impeached.
Yeah, the Donald Trump... US media should have followed our in-house rule in the podcast, which is wait 3 days before you talk about a story because they went so early with the impeachment stuff, and then it comes out like, oh, the transcripts come out. And again, it's another Rorschach test. Like, if you want impeachment, you can see it. If you don't, you don't. But it just seems like a classic Donald Trump doesn't really stick to what's supposed to be talked about in the script, and suddenly pops into his head and he just brings it up, and it's not a threat, but it, you know, if you really wanted it to be a threat, you can interpret it that way. Just a classic thing. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he's going to get impeached, and this is exactly the kind of stuff that's going to make sure he wins 2020 by an even bigger margin.
Yes, I think this will make more people vote for him in the end. So closer to home, the RMIT Confucius Centre has had an issue. So obviously we had RMIT last week.
Just an issue.
Yeah, just an issue. Had an issue last week with the teacher there encouraging people to go to the climate march, in fact giving them credits for that. Another bad story from RMIT. So the Chinese government, so they have a Confucius Centre like 13 other universities around Australia. We've got 14 IPA Generation Liberty coordinators, so we are winning, but it's a close run thing. So what emerged during the week was that the contract for this Confucius Centre with RMIT University has a clause in it, which a few other universities also have a clause that's similar, saying that the Chinese government has overriding authority over teaching at the Confucius Institute.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think on balance it's a bad thing, James. So the clause is the institute must accept the assessment of the Confucius Institute headquarters on the teaching quality. So now I did mention there's a few other universities that also have this clause. It's emerged over time. University of Queensland, Griffith University, La Trobe University, and Charles Darwin University. Where's the backlash, James, when they tried to have the Ramsay Centre at Sydney University? 100 academics wrote, signed an open letter, and they said it was, white supremacy writ large, I believe. Yet this is apparently fine.
Yeah, well, because the Chinese government's just a bit scarier than the Ramsay Foundation.
Yeah.
The other thing I like is like the classic education debate is like, oh, who should decide what their kids learn? Should the kids decide? Should the parents decide? Should the teachers decide? And now like the fourth person's come in, the Chinese government, should they decide?
Yeah, exactly. And they've sort of said, we'll do it.
Yeah. And I know it's a university, but I like the idea of like a parent-teacher night where this is just also a representative of the Chinese government, just making sure everything's okay. Anyway, just a classic story, and you're right. Like, where is the outrage? All right, another story we've got is facial recognition database is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. So it's building up to the nationwide rollout of the National Driver Licence facial recognition solution in December. And what's happened this week is that the Victorian government has uploaded all Victorian driver's licenses. So if you've had your driver's license photo taken the last couple of months, you're now part of a national register a national database of I'm blanking on the word. Driver's licenses.
Yeah.
That's the one. It's a classic wheel out of government talking points on it, where it's like, the data is only available to state-based agencies including Vic Roads and Victoria Police, and no one's ever going to be able to touch it. It's only going to be used for bad guys. And it's like, I just love the idea that the data will only be available to state-based agencies. They're talking about the data. The spokesman saying the data will only be available to state-based agencies, including Vic Roads and Victoria Police. And then the article takes a bit of a turn because it says at that point, a journalist asked, what about the possibility that it gets hacked? And the spokesman said, look over there, and then he ran away. And then the other part of it is like the justification for what would be the most significant compulsory collection of personal data since My Health Record is cracking down on identity fraud.
Yeah.
Because nothing is ever going to stop identity fraud, like a large centralized collection of all these people's personal information.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm hitting the hacking thing a lot, but it exists.
Oh, yeah. And
it's such a terrifying fear.
Who's going to be better at hacking? Like hackers out there, or some bureaucrat who's like, oh, I know the system that can... Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way that they can guarantee that this is protected.
Yeah, like literally this week, a bunch of hospitals got hacked into and patients' records were there. Like, if you think your driver's license is going to be okay with the federal government's thing, then you're an idiot. Like, this is 100% going to get hacked.
And they say, like, we're only going to use it in a certain way, we're not going to abuse it. And then a few years down the track, it emerges that like 60 government agencies are using it as opposed to the 2 or 3 that said they were going to use it in the first place.
Didn't like a fisheries body have access to people's metadata there for a while?
Well, I'm not sure, but it sounds like they need it, James. I don't think, credit where it's due.
The other part of it is, so they say like, we're going to use this for cracking down on criminals. So here's a fun fact. So London's Metropolitan Police used automated facial recognition in trials in 2016 and 2017. And do you want to give me an idea, like give me a guess of what you think were, how many people were wrongly identified through the use of facial recognition?
Well, I did read this, but I think it's like 98%.
It is 98%. Now, if you are wrong 98% of the time, then first off, you're better at me than my job. But second, you should not have that level of power over people. And you shouldn't have their facial recognition database until at least you can come up with something that's like maybe 98% or 100% positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are my points.
No, look, and it also, look, as we say, they don't know enough about this stuff. It's very creepy to people, and, government are just not in a position yet to deal with this information.
Yes.
I'm concerned.
But also we upload so much weird stuff about ourselves to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But anyway, it's just one of those ones. We got to figure out how we do that. All right. So major story 4. So ACT is bringing in cannabis, Pete.
Well, they're legalising it.
Yeah.
Bringing it in.
Back the truck up.
Yeah.
Bring it in. It's small, how much it's been legalised, but it's the first state or territory in Australia to bring it in. So under laws passed on Wednesday, adults in the ACT will be able to grow 2 cannabis plants each. The law says the plants cannot be grown in public or be accessible to children. So...
Fascists.
No, but I actually think this is a really good thing. And the main thing is, I just don't get as a country how we go... we absolutely cheer every time, right, and rightly so. We cheer like mad every time Bob Hawke takes a skulls a beer at the cricket. Yeah, that's always a great thing. But a nation that idolizes Bob Hawke or Merv Hughes' plane rides, for us to turn into complete cops the second weed gets brought up is a bit inconsistent for me.
Oh, I agree as well. I think people should be able to smoke marijuana if they want.
Yes.
Actually, one of the problems with this plan is that apparently it's difficult to grow marijuana plants in winter in Canberra.
Yeah.
So that's something
the article says, as any Canberra gardener can attest. How many gardeners are there out there trying to get high off their own supply? But
that's
anyway.
right.
And also, the other part of this I want to bring in. So the law is going to come into effect. The legalisation is going to come into effect from January 31, 2020. Now, how do you not do it in April? How do you not do it in 0420? If you're going to do weed legalisation, how do you not do it in April 2020? They have missed a trick
there, mate. That is exactly when they should do it. I was like, hang on, what is he on about?
Yeah.
Why April?
What I'm on about is absolute genius.
Nah, you're right there, James. They should do that. And look, what was I going to say? Look, I think this is a good thing because everyone, in Canberra, of course, is where they invent laws.
Yep.
Should we put in that legislation this week about banning this? Just relax, mate. Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. The one, if you're not sold on the prospect of people smoking marijuana, when, there's arguments to be made for it, surely the concept of government bureaucrats being less efficient and less motivated, surely that wins you over.
Well, that's the playoff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's go to the heroes and villains segment. So, heroes, every week we award people that stand up for...
There's that pig again.
Saul's just a rogue man. Saul will just wait until the moment when we're not expecting it and then just play the pig sound.
He waits a week for that moment.
Basically, that's a snort of freedom. Grunt the pig. The pig once banned from walking because he's a pig. And we just award Grunt the Pig freedom snouts to anyone that has stood up for freedom this week. So, Pete, you said you were looking forward to it. You said it was your favourite hero you've ever done. Talk to us.
It is one of my favourite heroes I've ever done. Marvel
Stadium. Scaled it back a bit.
Yeah. Marvel Stadium, October 6 in Melbourne. The UFC is in town, and with the UFC will come the Octagon Girls. Now, the Octagon Girls, for those who don't know, are women in bikinis who sort of announced, there we go, we've got it on the screen for the YouTube people, holding up the round number. We all know what
Everyone
we're talking
stopped
about.
listening to you, Pete.
We all know what we're talking about there. Melbourne Lord Mayor has said that the Octagon Girls are sexist and backward and outdated. She said, it's 2019. Do we really need scantily clad women to wander around the middle of a fighting ring between rounds? Now, that's sort of just a comment that she's made. We've seen grid girls sacked from F1 and walk-on girls are no longer part of the darts. James, I know you're a big darts fan. Now, you're probably thinking Pete just likes chicks in bikinis. And I do, but that is not the point. This is a serious point here. We saw in Bendigo at a boxing event, Bendigo in Victoria a few weeks ago, the promoters of the boxing event actually replaced all the female ring girls with male ring blokes or whatever. So effectively all these women who had jobs got sacked for these weedy, nerdy little guys in slacks and shirt holding up. Oh, it's round 4 now. So
where was the feminist outrage that men are coming in taking female jobs?
Well, how can you possibly say you're empowering women when you're literally making them unemployed?
Yeah, exactly. If anything's going to hurt the gender pay gap, it is the fact that women are no longer employed and men are taking those jobs.
I don't get it. And you just say, oh, well, you wouldn't know your own mind. You're obviously making bad decisions. Now, Callista Thomas, she was one of these women up in Bendigo. She said, to undermine my work as a ring card and call it sexualised, I feel is absolutely discriminatory. Never in my time in the ring or at the fights have I been made to feel less worthy for being there. Now, I can't believe in 2019 we really think that, a woman who's confident in her body and confident in, and enjoys male attention, we're like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
She mustn't know her own mind.
I know better what's good for her than she does.
We better make decisions for her because she can't possibly do that. So, in lieu of all that, the Octagon Girls and the UFC, because the UFC came out and defended their role, you're my hero this week.
The other part of the story I really liked is back to Lord Mayor Sally Capp's statement. Do we really need scantily clad women to wander around in the middle of a fighting ring? No one needs anything.
Yeah.
Like, you just need oxygen and water. Like, the rest of it is just gravy. But I do like the idea.
The rest of it?
Like, just anything
Everything
else.
else, yeah.
Anything else is just pure want.
Yeah.
And if you want something, go get it. Though I do think we should praise a politician so we should praise a politician for reverting back to we should only provide people with needs. Like, if only every politician was just like, what do we need to do rather than what do we want to do?
Well, you're being nice to Sally there. I couldn't find anything. And the thing, the boxers are scantily clad as well.
Yeah.
Like we're just celebrating the human form.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
All right. So my hero of the week is Todd Phillips. So The Joker coming out this week. It is going to be the most controversial movie of 2019. There's already a bunch of articles coming out of like, should this even be done? A lot of blue check marks on Twitter are getting into it. Like, how dare we provide a platform? I mean, I think we got a bit of the trailer ready for us to go. And you can sort of see like this is basically an incel anthem.
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do. And people are starting to notice.
Yeah, so it's basically like the origin story of the Joker and how disaffection in society and like getting continually beat down inspires his movement. And yeah, like a lot of people are coming out saying like this is just going to lead to a spate of incel violence. And to me, the Joker will lead to incel violence is Harry Potter will lead to Satanism for people who drink kombucha. Like that, like that is what it is. You can't say this art form should be banned because of what we think it's going to do to kids. You've got to go, let's have the art form, let's talk about why we don't like it, and let's talk to our kids about what is good and what's bad.
On that logic, you can't have anything negative in a film.
Yeah, no violence. Sorry, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah. Or you can't have racism, or you can't have the Holocaust, or you can't have people getting, cheated on.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just like, what if it inspires people to do that?
What an absolutely boneheaded idea.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't wait to see it. And good on Tom. Oh, well, the reason it's Tom Phillips is the hero, and rather than just Bolt's ivory tower.
Yeah.
Todd Phillips has gotten onto this. So he's like talking about all the criticism that he's getting, and he says it's because outrage is a commodity. I think that's something that's been commodity for a while. What's outstanding to me in the discourse for this movie is how easily the far left could sound like the far right when it suits their agenda. It's been really eye-opening for me. Exactly right.
Well,
Todd Phillips, hero. All right, let's go over to the villains, which is our Walter Peck Villainy Award. It's basically the inverse. Anyone that stood up for tyranny and against freedom. We're running a bit long, so let's make this quick.
I'll make it quick, mate.
Who is your villain of the week?
My villain this week is the Drought Communities Program Extension and the Bureau of Meteorology. They awarded the Moyne Shire in Victoria's southeast $1 million in drought assistance. Now, a councillor for the Moyne Shire, the guy's name is
Colin Ryan.
Colin Ryan. He said, "We are not in drought. It's green. We're enjoying a good season." Now, what happened was the BOM provided this other government body with a map of Australia which said Moyne was 60% in drought. These people that say they can predict climate in the future can't even say if a shire right now is in drought or not. So BOM and the Drought Communities Program Extension, for giving $1 million to a shire not in drought, you're a villain.
Yeah, well, and we should say, like, Colin Ryan's rejected the funding.
They rejected
and
it.
for
Good on 'em.
that purpose, Australian of the Year. Like, any politician that's turning down federal government funding, Australian of the Year immediately.
I bet you they haven't moved Australia, though.
Yeah, and I love the classic idea of like, well, you may think you live in green, but our graph here tells you differently.
Yeah, if you look at this map.
If you look at this map with heat waves, you'll see that you're living in hell.
Yeah.
Classic stuff. All right, my one is the Victorian court system, which has been copying it a fair bit over the last couple of years with some questionable sentencing, and this one's another one. So people in Melbourne and Victoria, and I think we talked about it on the show, so any listeners might remember that back in April, vegan protesters shut down Melbourne CBD for a little bit as they were protesting animal husbandry. So their sentence got put down. People that had blocked off city traffic, that have disrupted thousands of people's lives, their sentence got handed down. They were ordered to pay a $100 fine to an animal sanctuary each.
Sorry, what did you say?
They were ordered to pay
But to whom?
$100 to an animal sanctuary each.
So they borrowed $100 off their parents
Yep.
and gave it to a charity they would have
They
supported
already
anyway.
would have supported. Like, everyone's doing the jokes, like the exact same joke, but it is literally a
You're
case
saying
of
I'm
like,
unoriginal.
No, but like everyone's doing this is the punishment of you play too many video games, so we're going to give you $100 to spend on
Yeah.
FIFA My Player Ultimate Team.
Yeah, you get drunk and disorderly, you can donate to a brewery.
Yeah, exactly. So Melbourne court system, they are the villain of the week.
Yeah.
All right, let us go to our interview with Daisy Cousens.
Cool.
Okay, we now welcome back onto the show famous YouTuber and Sky News After Dark conspirator Daisy Cousens. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, Daisy, this week Australia got brought straight into the Trump impeachment things with all these stories. So how exactly did Australia get into the international news cycle?
Well, for some reason, Bill Shorten and Anthony Albanese, still fresh off their bitterness after unexpectedly losing the election earlier in the year, have brought up this phone call between Donald Trump and Scott Morrison about an investigation into the Mueller report for Russian collusion, which, as we know, turned out to be the greatest conspiracy theory of the past 100 years. Hence the fact I'm not surprised that Trump is wanting to do a bit of an investigation into it. Now, this was according to Scott Morrison, he went on Sky News and did an interview with David Spears, and we know David Spears asks the tough questions, and he did. He said it was a very uneventful phone call, not long at all, where Trump simply said, can you give me a point of contact within the Australian government so we can organise this inquiry? And Scott Morrison said, okay. Now, of course, the media, the fake news media went nuts over that, and Labor leaders, past and present, went nuts over that and said, oh, the Prime Minister needs to tell us the whole truth, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyway, it turns out Joe Hockey actually offered Australia's assistance in a letter months ago. And Scott Morrison said that he said yes to Trump simply under the assumption that Australia had already said yes. And that, in fact, considering our alliance with the US is so strong and so long-standing, it would actually be unusual for him to say no. So this is another giant furphy concocted by people who have personal vendettas rather than political ones to smear and discredit conservative leaders, obviously in America, but evidently in Australia as well. And I did a live stream tomorrow on this very topic, and one of the questions from the Americans was, hey, this is happening in our media, is this making the media over there, or what's everyone reacting? And I'm like, yeah, everyone chill out, it's another nothing burger. It's okay.
Daisy, we were discussing earlier on the show how much the Australian media enjoys one of those rare moments when we're actually in the centre of global affairs. Do you see that as well, the Australian losing its mind, the Australian media?
Yeah, they're pretty chuffed with themselves. I'm still sort of getting up to date on the coverage. I mean, it's not every day that Australia does end up in the middle of the global media landscape. I mean, really, we see that spot taken up by the USA pretty much all of the time, with a little bit of relief, I guess, from the UK at the moment with Brexit. But really, it seems to be that American politics is the star of the global show. And it's interesting. A lot of the questions I get from my followers is, why are you so interested in American politics? And I say, well, because it has a giant cultural flow-on effect in Australia. For us, it's sort of like reality TV, you know what I mean? So the only time Australian politics really enters the fray generally is if it's connected to America. So I think we're all a little bit excited about this, and interesting to see where it plays. And I'm just grateful, though, it's for something as trivial as this and not another leadership spill.
Yeah, the other aspect is, like, American politics is just straight up better than Australian politics. I mean, like, the RBA cuts have led the front pages for 3 straight days. That wouldn't last 20 minutes in America before people had moved on to the next thing. It's just so much more fun.
It is tough.
I fully agree with you. It's very tough to compete when something as very important but as boring as interest rates is dominating the Australian news cycle.
I like what Greg Gutfeld said about it, because, like, the Australian thing comes up fresh off the Trump calling Ukraine president about the stuff. So it's clearly like the Democrats went all in on impeachment proceedings. With the Ukraine stuff, that seems to already be starting to lose steam. So immediately the Australian one gets picked up as an international news story. Greg Gutfeld said, like, this is basically a field of dreams strategy. If you just build the impeachment proceedings, the impeachment will come. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, look, I'm really puzzled by this whole impeachment thing because they certainly seem to be building on it, or at least attempting to build on it. And Nancy Pelosi obviously thinks she has a case. But if you take it step by step, this phone call that Trump had with the Ukrainian president, I'm sure we've all read it. It was so banal and normal. The only thing that was dedicated to investigating the Bidens was about one paragraph where Trump very sort of lightly said, oh, hey, maybe you could just do this thing for me. They talked about Rudy Giuliani more than they did about investigating the Bidens. So when you look at it like that, Trump actually hasn't done anything wrong in an objective sense. It's all how you interpret the letter. I mean, not the letter, the phone call, the transcript. I mean, I look at that and I think, well, I don't really mind world leaders having that kind of conversation, but you can interpret it as, oh, well, perhaps they shouldn't be doing each other favors that aren't in the general public interest, or perhaps you could interpret this as quid pro quo or pressure, etc. So the only way you can pull out, oh, Trump did bad, is if you twist the phone call into a particular way. Now, if you compare that to the impeachment of Bill Clinton back in the 90s, where he had really done wrong, including, for instance, perjury. I mean, he clearly committed crimes there. So it was very easy to build a case and to say, hey, this guy should probably be impeached. Compare this to Trump, and it's just so silly. And Nancy Pelosi must know that it is more than likely going to fail, because it's likely, I reckon it'll pass the House because the Democrats have the majority there. But in the Senate, not only do the Republicans have the majority, you also need a 2/3 supermajority in order to actually kick someone out of office, any public official, including a president. So what on earth is she playing that? All this is going to do is dominate the political news cycle for the next 4 or 5 months, detract totally from the Democrat presidential candidate's policy, annoy everyone even more by talking about stuff that's a waste of time and money. And my theory is that maybe she's done this because she has zero faith in her 19 presidential candidates and is thinking maybe the way to beat Trump is to have this shadow of impeachment hanging over him.
Well, that's an interesting point, Daisy. I was going to ask you about that. What do you think the long-term ramifications are for this? Because we were sort of talking earlier that perhaps actually Trump's base will actually support him more as a result of what they perceive as, the establishment going after him.
Well, we can see that in the fundraising, actually. I mean, for starters, Trump has raised a significant amount more than Obama had at this exact point in his presidency, and certainly tens of millions more than any of his Democrat contenders. But since this impeachment stuff has happened, they got 50,000 new donations to the Republican National Committee in 2 days. Okay, 2 days. So that's really his base absolutely rallying around him completely in the face of yet another kind of pointless smear by the fake news media and, of course, the Democrats. And the interesting thing is I was looking at the polls today about who wants impeachment, who doesn't. And I was looking at the 538. And let me pull it up here for you so we have these numbers. Here we go. So at the moment, 46.7% of the population support impeachment, whereas 45.1% don't support. Now, that is not alarming because that basically mirrors the 2016 election results. So what you have here is the same sort of bitter leftists who are going, impeach Trump for any little perceived offense. And then the Republicans who are going, God, no, please don't. And then the independents is somewhere in the middle. And if you want to take it party by party, 79.6% of Democrats want to impeach, but only 12.1% of Republicans do. So his support is as strong as ever amongst the Republican base, and certainly building considering those fundraising donations.
Yeah, I saw another very interesting poll that I think President Trump tweeted out from Breitbart showing that 97% of respondents on Breitbart stand with President Trump, which, Kim Jong-un looks at that and he wonders how to get anywhere near there. Daisy, another one. Thank you for bringing the hardcore statistics, but if there's one thing Pete and I like on the show, it's memes. And I don't know if you saw Donald Trump this morning tweeting out, just because we're talking about the impeachment. So Donald Trump tweeted out this video. If you're listening instead of watching this show, it's basically just a parody of what Joe Biden's dealings with Ukraine. So Saul, if you could cue that up, please.
Have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. How did our eyes get so red? And what the hell is on Joey's head?
Yeah, so for people listening, that was the photograph playing over a photo of Joe Biden, his son, and a Ukrainian executive playing golf together. Have we reached the pinnacle of meme culture in that the president is just purely communicating through memes? I mean, our previous generations had the fireside chats. We now have
Books.
memes.
I think you might be exactly right there. I think Donald Trump has cemented himself as the greatest internet troll of our times. He is the king of Twitter. He is the king of memes. He is the God Emperor Overlord of the internet. And I've said this a few times. I thought, who'd have thunk the king of the internet would end up being a 74-year-old man? I mean, it's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just I can't believe that song is back on people's radar. That's the first time I've heard that song since Year 12 broke up. And I'm just glad this is Nickelback's biggest moment ever, and it's 15 years after they were relevant.
Were Nickelback ever relevant?
That's pretty funny.
That's some pretty big
Well, that's
songs.
the thing. I was never a huge fan of them, but I had a few friends who were. But I hope they're thankful to Donald Trump, even if they hate him. They might be giant lefties, I'm not sure, but at least they'd be thinking, well, at least we're the pinned tweets on the most notorious Twitter account on the planet's wall.
Yeah, their Spotify charts just probably jumped up a fair bit.
I did listen to that this morning, I must admit.
Brought back a few memories. All right, so Daisy, let's change topics here for a second. So another thing you've been talking about on your YouTube channel is the climate movement in the wake of Greta Thunberg's speech. So what do you make of Greta Thunberg? Is she the world's savior or is she a manipulated teenager?
Oh, God. Poor Greta Thunberg. I have so much sympathy for that girl. I've made a few videos on her. And in the first one, I made it clear I'm not dismissing her because she has autism, and depression. There's been plenty of wonderful leaders throughout history who've been struggling with mental health and neurological health. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't take what she's saying seriously. She's an incredibly intelligent girl and obviously very, very driven. The problem is she is being indulged and exploited by adults who really should know better. You've got to think with Greta, she's had an absolute nightmare of a time since she was about 8 years old with her mental health. I mean, she's very open about her Asperger's. She also has autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, history of depression, a history of anxiety. She had an eating disorder when she was 11 that caused her to lose about 10 kilograms in about a month. Plus, there was the selective mutism where for a number of months she didn't talk to anyone except her mother, her father, and her sister. And all of this was to do with the anxiety she felt over climate change, because you look at the condition she has, they make her predispositioned to anxiety and fear and fixation. So this isn't a matter of a girl thinking, oh, goodness, well, there's a problem, we've got a problem here and we need to find a solution. She lives in a literal state of genuine terror that she's going to die a premature death because of climate change. Now, ordinarily, a girl in her circumstances would be counseled out of that and protected from this climate alarmism so she can enjoy some sort of quality of life. But here, the opposite is happening. She's being dumped into the spotlight, having all her worst fears confirmed by the adults around her who have this globalist agenda, and she's being, in the worst possible position, which is in the middle of the media cycle. And I think it's child abuse.
Yeah, because when she gave that speech to the UN, I was expecting that to be like the famous Gillard sexism in Parliament speech. Like that would be played at schools, or would be played at universities. It would be just, in the culture for months and months afterwards. But it's kind of gone away because I kind of feel that there was a lot of her supporters who watched her give that speech and watched the state that she was in and just thought, I don't feel comfortable with this anymore. I think people are starting to wake up to, hang on, maybe Greta Thunberg isn't the savior and maybe she is being manipulated.
Oh, definitely. I agree. And I was chatting to some people the other day who have very different views of me on politics, but we all agreed on Greta. And just she looked like a distressed teenager, saying these terrible things like, "You've stolen my dreams and my childhood," with big tears in her eyes. I mean, who could look at that and think that's in any way acceptable, that she's been allowed to get herself into that state? I mean, I don't have children, but I am of maternal age, shall we say, and my kind of motherhood spidey senses were setting off these big alarm bells, and I thought, you poor little kid. So I think people have realized that this is an extreme movement. There is extreme pressure being put on her, and I hope they're kind of starting to move on and realize that this is not a good scene.
Righto, Daisy, we've got time for one more. We saw Antifa abuse and block an elderly couple from entering a political event in Canada this week. Do we need a hotline for angry Antifa operatives who can't stand old people having an opinion?
I think we possibly do. I mean, oh my God, that footage needs to be the face of Antifa. I mean, I talked about this on your dad's show. That sweet
Was that me or
little
Pete?
old couple.
I didn't know Dad had a show. He's retired now, so he's got a bit of extra time for stuff like that.
Oh, of course. No, I talked about it on the Vault Report. This sweet little old couple could not have posed a physical threat if they tried, and yet you had these masked thugs yelling in their faces, even though the woman was on a walker. So what I think that proves to us is that Antifa's greatest threat, what they perceive as the greatest threat, isn't Nazis or white supremacists or fascists or whatever they talk about. It's dissent. They can't handle dissent no matter who it comes from. So you could be the sweetest little old couple, one of them practically immobile, but if you are heading to an event hosted by people they don't like, in this case it was Dave Rubin and Maxime Bernier, then you're evidently a Nazi and evil, and no matter who you are, you're a threat and must be physically intimidated. And that needs to be the face of Antifa. And that needs to be put to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley, who not only refused on camera to condemn Antifa, they also helped fundraise for them a little while ago by retweeting the bail funds of the Antifa activists that were arrested at the trollish straight pride parade. So they're literally fundraising for people who are domestic terrorists. That needs to be put to them to say, hey, you condone Antifa, you support them, this is also what you support.
All right, brilliant. Daisy, thanks so much for coming on. Make sure you subscribe to Daisy Cousens' YouTube page, and we'll talk in future.
Thank you so much. Great to be there.
All right, we're now joined by the University of Adelaide Campus Coordinator for the IPA's Generation Liberty program, Angus Heaton. Angus, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Oh, look, mate, I'm really good. So the reason we've got you on the show is because you're holding an event called How Do We Fix Australia's Energy Crisis? Tell us why that's important and how do people sign up?
Well, in being South Australian, we've had a bit of history with blackouts and energy in our state. So I just think that it's really important that students at university have the opportunity to hear the debate about what the best source of energy is for our state and for the country. To sign up, the Facebook event is going up this afternoon. So just go to the Generation Liberty Facebook page and, click on the event. All the details will be on there.
Yeah, so it's at the University of Adelaide, is it?
Yeah, that's right, on
cool.
campus.
So what I like about this event is that you've got someone from all aspects of the energy debate. You've got someone who's going to be pro-nuclear, you've got someone who's going to be pro-fossil fuels, and you've got someone who's going to be pro-renewables. The one thing I thought I would have liked to have seen is another speaker to say that we should have more Elon Musk batteries.
Well, yeah, that's right, because we've got, I think, the world's biggest battery in South Australia, thanks to Elon. So I'm sure the person who advocates for renewables will have something to say about that.
Well, that's good to hear. That's great to hear. So this is time to around all the climate change strikes which have been occurring over the last couple of weeks. What's the feeling of the student body towards that? Are they for it? Are they against it? Are they mixed? What's the story?
There was a pretty big contingent from Adelaide Uni that went to the climate strike. I didn't go personally, but they're all marching down North Terrace. So it would appear that people are pretty passionate about it, but again, there was only a couple of hundred students out of however many we have at the uni, so I'm really not sure what most people think, to be honest.
Yeah, because that's something we were talking about on our show when the climate strikes were happening, was it did seem that the last few strikes were probably more well attended than these ones, even though this one had a fair bit of press. Was that something you saw at Adelaide?
Yeah, I think so, particularly because just how much of a media spectacle this has become. I think more people are hearing about it and go along either in support or just to see what's happening, I think.
So if there was one message that you wanted attendees to take away from the event that you're holding, what would that message be?
Good question. I think just that, it's all well and good to have Greta Thunberg on the news crying about a mass extinction happening, but I think at the end of the day, we need to have a sensible conversation about where we're going to get our energy from, what we need to be doing about climate change, and just to have a rational debate rather than scaremongering.
All right. For those that are interested, these events are happening at other universities around Australia in the coming weeks and months. So keep an eye on the Generation Liberty Facebook for details of that. We'll move on now. So your enemy number one at your university, Angus, you moved a motion with the SRC, I believe, to welcome the Ramsay Centre to the University of Adelaide. What happened then?
So I'm on the AUU board, and I moved a motion suggesting that we look at entering into a partnership with the Ramsay Centre, because I know it's happened at a couple of other unis. Then the SRC wrote a nice media release about me, basically saying that I'm affiliated with the Institute of Public Affairs, a, quote, radical right-wing think tank. So they're obviously not very happy about that. So 50-odd students actually rocked up to that meeting, most of whom were socialists, and they were not really interested in hearing the debate. They were just, there to shout me down and call me a fascist and all those nice names.
Well, they actually sort of sold it a bit short, because they said you're affiliated. You're actually employed by the IPA, but that's all right.
It's a pretty strong affiliation.
Right. Then what happened? How did the motion end up?
The motion didn't pass. So two of us, there's 10 directors, 2 of us voted in favour, 4 abstained and 4 voted against. So you need a majority.
Abstentions are always, pick a side, I reckon.
Yeah, I know.
Who were they? So who were the abstentions?
They are people from... So they're all from one faction. They're Progress, who are basically made up of largely international students. And I think they probably just abstained because it's a pretty controversial thing.
I also like the idea that they try and muster the forces of socialism to bring you down, and they can only whip up 50 people in a crowded university. I mean, that's not the biggest sign.
I was expecting a few more, to be honest.
All right, so, but I would imagine, with your work with Generation Liberty, we can laugh about the hatred you get from socialists, but you get a lot of positive feedback at the University of Adelaide, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a similar sort of debate earlier in the year, and that was quite well attended, and everyone who was there said it was really good and they had a good time. So a lot of people seem to be at least interested, if not willing to actively get on board and participate.
That's what I reckon, because people often say, you work at the IPA, you must get a lot of criticism. And you do get criticism, but you get vastly more praise, unwarranted, I think, in our case, for our work. Anyway, what's the scene like in South Australia generally, Angus? We don't do that much stuff on South Australia on the Young IPA podcast. Are there many liberty-minded people at the university there?
There are, I think. The University Liberal Club, and there are a couple of other sort of liberty-minded groups on campus as well. It's pretty good. Things seem to be pretty well attended. And yeah, I think a lot more students are steadily being more willing to, express their opinions and, attend things.
All right, Angus. Well, thank you so much for your time, mate. Once again, if you want to see more information about that event, go to the Generation Liberty Facebook page. Angus, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, we're back with another edition of Hey, What Did We Miss? The Young IPA quiz. We've got a very fun quiz for you this week. We've got returning champion Andrew Bushnell. We've got Theodora. We've got Pete. It is all off.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so if this is your first quiz, basically it's 1 point if you get it right, 1 point if you don't. I'm talking to the people watching at home, Pete.
Yeah.
1 point if you get it right, 1 point off if you don't. Buzzers are going to be your first names because we still don't have buzzers. So, Pete.
Oh, Roof.
Oh, yeah, of course, the Roof Seal. Theodora.
TP.
TP and Bushnell?
I'll stick with Dusty because I won last week.
Well, that did trip you up last week.
No, but this time, I'm used to it.
I feel you only separated yourself from the pack once you abandoned the Dusty and reverted back to Andrew.
No. I was consistent, and I will say that the only news that I've read this week is Richmond related.
Okay, so I reckon you might be okay for one of them.
You can't get rid of Dusty this week.
No, absolutely not. All right, so we all ready to go?
Yep.
Any questions for the host? No, we're all good. Okay, cool. All right, so question 1: who won the 2019 AFL Grand Final?
Give it to Dusty.
Give it to Dusty.
Richmond.
They did indeed, and what a great day it was.
See, Theodore, you should have watched it. Then you
No, I knew who won.
Oh, okay.
Well, where were you on the answer? All right, okay. Question 2. Now, we're going to get a bit more serious now.
Okay.
As much as I would love to do 9 questions about how good Marlon Pickett was. All right, question 2. China this week marks 70 years of communist rule. How long did the USSR last?
Dusty.
Well, roof just
69.
It did indeed. Very nice, Pete.
Back of the net.
Back of the net. All right, question 3. 36 vegan protesters admitted to causing an obstruction when they shut down parts of Melbourne CBD in April. How much were they fined?
TP.
TP.
$100 donated to an animal shelter.
Absolutely correct. $100
That'll
each.
definitely teach them. That'll learn them.
$100.
They have to borrow $100 off their parents for that.
Yeah, exactly. And then to an animal shelter that they would have donated to anyway.
Yeah.
So, another big tick for the Melbourne court system. All right. According to IPA research fellow Kurt Wallace, for every one page...
Roof.
there we go.
8.
8 is correct. Sorry.
It was in Hey, what did I miss?
It was in Hey, what did I miss? Sorry, if anyone missed it out there who watches. Sorry, Kurt Wallace's new video that's available on all of our social media channels and our website on regulatory dark matter. For every one page of legislation that actually comes out of Parliament, you can get another 8 pages from regulators that you won't end up seeing. Very damaging stuff. Unaccountable. Regulatory dark matter, get on it. All right, question 5. Oh, sorry. Quick score check for the panel. So Pete's on 2,
Yes.
Theodora is on 1, and Andrew is also on 1.
Pretty tight.
Pretty tight. A lot to play for. All right, so Australia Post and the Royal Australian Mint will release a new $1 coin for each letter of the alphabet, and each coin's got like a iconic Australian thing attached to it. So, for example, V has Vegemite and F has footy. What is A?
Dusty.
Dusty.
Look at him. Intent.
He's got it. He's losing it.
Australia Post.
It is Australia Post. How is that an iconic thing starting with A?
That is garbage. that is not iconic.
Yeah, I like it literally, they've just gone, we're the most iconic thing.
We're pretty good.
We're better than
By the way, those coins are awesome. Like Z for Zupa Duper.
That is a good one.
That's
there were
iconic.
some good
M
ones.
for meat pie.
Yeah, Y for Yowie.
I'm surprised that got approved. Like, there is absolutely no PC content in the 26 at all. It's
That's
amazing.
true. Wait, which one are you surprised got approved?
All of them.
All of them. Yep.
The entire thing. Because it's like kind of a throwback to like a kind of ochre kind of Aussie thing, rather than like a whole lot of buzzwords.
I think the intersection of people that collect coins and people that care about woke culture is very sparse. I reckon they're 2 different circles.
I'm not sure that the coin collection circle interacts or overlaps with too many other circles at all.
They've just got the one circle that is we care about coins, and we're all over the age of 80.
I'm going to collect those coins though, but then I don't overlap with too many others.
All right, sweet. Okay, who wrote to the US Attorney General to offer Australia's help?
Dusty.
Joe Hockey. Bushnell pulling away. Andrew on 3. Peter on 2. Theodora on 1. All right, so question, what are we up to? 7. Sydney's lockout laws are said to be scaled back. True or false? Oh, wow. Too early. There's more question to go.
Sorry.
Theodora, just say.
Take a miracle.
Can I retract that?
Look, you can retract it, but you're going to lose the point anyway. So I would either give yourself a true or false. There is a 50% chance of you getting this right.
True.
It is true. I say King's Cross will still have lockout laws placed upon it.
Yeah.
Theodora with an absolute
The
steal.
gamble paid off.
Fortune favours the brave.
Fortune does favour the brave. All right, so in the viral video, who was stopped by Antifa from entering a Dave Rubin event?
An old lady?
An old lady is correct.
I was like, I knew it was an old lady, but it's like, do I need to know her name anymore?
Exactly. Her occupation, why she was attending. Antifa, always standing up against the the oppressors of society, including an old lady trying to cross the street.
It was a rough video.
It was.
Like, this is actually sad.
I think she had a Zimmer frame.
She did indeed. That's got to be one of those ones like the Mitchell and Webb sketch, which I think I've referenced. Like you've got to be in the line, holding up an old lady and preventing her from crossing the road, and just look at yourself and go, am I the bad guy in this situation?
Yes,
this doesn't feel good. All right, cool. So last question before we get into the Who Am I? The Joker movie out this week is said to be the most controversial film of the year. Who directed it?
Oh, you told me this before.
I did. Should have been listening to me instead of just waiting for your
Dusty,
turn to speak.
My rule is to not listen, though.
Todd Phillips?
It is Todd Phillips.
Good work, Dusty.
All right, so coming into the Who Am I, we've got Andrew on 4, we've got Peter on 3, we've got Theodore on 2. Anyone can still win it.
Yeah.
We don't need the absolute Hail Mary 5-point answer,
Yeah.
which is always a treat. But if anyone does want to throw out a 5-point Hail Mary answer, that is always fantastic. All right, so 5 points. My famous book on capitalism was published on this day. We're recording on Tuesday. On this day in 1867. Think out loud. This is an audio-based quiz.
Hang on.
Just fill the void.
Oh, no. Got nothing.
Anyone want to fire anything off? All right.
This is another economics. Who
On
am I?
capitalism.
Just 2 weeks ago, I reckon Pete is stitching.
If you think,
my economics PhD.
if you think I will do anything to help Pete win this quiz,
What is the-
you are out of your mind.
Yeah, no.
All right, no
I
one
don't
wants
wanna
to
risk
take a
it.
stab?
I don't want to risk it this
You will
early.
lose a point if you get it wrong. Okay. So while that book was published in 1867, for 4 points, my most famous book was published in 1848.
Roof. Karl Marx.
It is Karl Marx.
Yes.
Peter has reclaimed his
I
prize.
knew it was Karl Marx the first
Thanks,
time.
That's because you said 1887 when you read out the clue. I would have got it.
Go to the tape.
I said it's 1867. How dare you? All right.
No, I'm just clutching at straws here. So I
Oh,
feel
mate.
so ashamed.
You won the flag. Don't worry
You know
about
what
the
it
quiz.
is? You're so used to victory with Richmond. You've been presented with defeat. You don't quite know how to compartmentalize it. You've got
Absolute
Bolt must have
just
screwed up
absolute
here.
bitterness as well.
all right.
I thought you were going to something a little bit more complex about Richmond
Yeah.
rather than who
Yeah,
won.
Well, I was gonna this is quite the thing because I thought until very recently the fact that Richmond have won 2 out of the 3 last flags was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. But Pete's won 2 out of the last 3 quizzes. That is far more impressive.
And I should have won last year, just like Richmond.
Exactly. You choked in the
Last
last
week.
couple of questions.
Anyway.
All right. Sweet. That is it for this quiz. So, yeah, we've got more show for you guys coming up after this.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Pete. Another quiz win for you.
Yep.
This, we're in. I never thought I'd be here with Pete as dominant as your run has been. A true Richmond of the last 3 years run for Peter.
After decades of dysfunction, now I'm top of the pile.
All right, sweet. Let's run through some stories that made us laugh this week. All right, so we got a new segment for you guys.
Yeah.
It's basically we do a lot of nanny street stories here on the show. We want to start putting them into a collected group.
Segment form.
So this is a new segment. Won't someone please think of the children?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Yeah, so this is just a classic freak out because kids are being exposed to, what the real world is.
Glad we finally got some Simpsons in the show.
Yeah, it's been a long struggle for me to get my favourite TV show in. All right, so the story is, and it's something we've been following for a while, but the Sydney lockout laws, the whole will they be repealed or not, had an update this week. It looks like they will be axed in the CBD, but retained in King's Cross, and venues rewarded for self-reporting bad behaviour. So that seems to be the takeout. That's probably what the government's going to end up doing. But I just like the fact that the lockout laws are still going to remain in the King's Cross. It's like, okay, we'll repeal the lockout laws.
In the King's Cross.
In the King's Cross.
Okay.
We'll repeal the lockout laws, just not in the one place where it'd be awesome to do it.
Yeah, where everyone wants to go.
Yeah, exactly. Like the best thing we have, we're still not going to use it.
Exactly right. And so just to clarify, this is the inquiry handed down its report, and the government is predicted to do what they say.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% in
but,
law yet.
It's most likely going to.
Yeah, we can read the tea leaves.
The tea leaves is telling us one thing, and that is drinking is back on the menu.
This is why
most of Sydney.
Yeah, this is why you got to fight stuff when it happens, because it's so hard to wind it back, and even when they do wind it back, they don't wind it all the way back.
Yeah. You just hope that the graphs of people saying Sydney's actually kind of fun skyrockets, and there's no more ads of people going to bowling and then going to go see Aladdin and then calling it a night.
Rough.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google that ad. It is hilarious. So, yeah, there's that story. All right. So, another story we got. So, Clover Moore, Pete, talk us through it.
Well, stay in Sydney because we've done a lot of AFL stuff in the last couple of weeks. So, we want to,
Go Tigers.
make sure our Sydney people are happy.
Make sure we're getting a good shot of the scarf.
Oh, yeah. For those watching on YouTube, you're missing absolutely nothing. Now, a few weeks after Clover Moore, Lord Mayor of Sydney, wrote to the government saying Australia was facing a climate emergency. Thank God a local government finally did that. Energy Minister Angus Taylor wrote back a letter, which was in the Daily Telegraph this week, which was pretty funny. Now, he wrote in part, I'll read parts of it, to Clover Moore. You might be interested to know that there are many practical ways local councils can take real and meaningful action to reduce their carbon emissions. One such example is to limit unnecessary air travel. given your most recent annual report shows your council spent $1.7 million on international travel. This is a local council. And $14.2 million on domestic travel, there is a real opportunity. So obviously a very sarcastic tone there, which was pretty funny. In February this year, Miss Moore and the council staff spent $39,000 on going to this very important conference in Paris, Women for Climate Conference. So obviously a lot of really important stuff there for the local businesses in Sydney. So isn't it just absolutely typical of people like this, James?
Yeah, so Clover Moore has been someone who's caught our ire a few times. Like she's
good for content.
Yeah, she's the person that's cut out all the park lights and also like stopped wearing the mayoral gear because apparently it was racist, but it wasn't. Anyway, so she gives us the goods, and but I will defend her on this one point because you raised how she spent $1.7 million on international travel and $14.2 million on domestic travel. In her defense, she was jetting around removing park lights so people could be assaulted carbon neutrally.
Yeah.
So, we've got to make sure like she is at least remaining on brand.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
All right. The final story we got. So Donald Trump, like we don't really do, every podcast in the world does what did Trump tweet this week? And it's pretty boring, but this one was just so good that we had to do it. So Donald Trump, is copying it a lot with the Ukraine story. So he just wanted to tweet out that people do support him. So he tweets out, if you can't read it, it's from you can't really quite see it on YouTube here, but it's a Breitbart poll. So Breitbart being, pretty pro-Trump in the best of times. Do you stand with President Trump? 97.83% yes, 2.1% no. I mean, Kim Jong-un looks at those returns and goes, how's he doing it? Like, that's a lot of fun.
Exactly right.
I mean, classic Trump just going like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I assume it's intentional.
Yeah.
But everyone's running with the Trump poll angle. But I actually looked through the rest of the Breitbart poll.
Okay.
And I found some pretty interesting returns. So if we could just actually show the next graph, which is, do you stand with Pete? Like our mate Peter
97%.
97.83% yes, 2.1% no. So people really stand with Pete. And I haven't actually seen this yet, but if we could, it's a 97% rejection of me. So I guess we'll just have to end the show there. It's pretty brutal. All right, that is it for the show this week. Thank you to Daisy Cousens and Angus Heaton. Make sure you are telling your friends and family about the show. We're available on all podcast platforms. We're also now filming on YouTube, on the Young IPA Podcasting YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you do have friends that watch podcasts rather than listen to them, let them know. See you guys next week.
See you later.